Before this video starts, I would like to thank everyone for 100 subs. A double upload will be coming on Saturday. Since the support is strong, let's get to 500 subs by the end of April, and I will have a whole weekend of double uploads. So let's get this channel clipped up on TikTok, share it about, and let's take over the horror scene. Thank you everyone again. Story 1. There was a new family that moved in next door to my family. They had a son and a very young daughter, who was just a toddler. But the son, on the other hand, he was just twisted. He loved watching slasher movies and always wanted me to talk about shit that happened during my time serving in Vietnam and other places, which did scar me in a way, and no normal person would want to hear about it. He also loved tormenting stray animals. This one time I was just driving into my driveway. Then I seen him throw rock at some random cat. I shouted at him, but he just ran off. This guy was a sick fuck. He was 18 at the time and my daughter was 5-year-old, but he always wanted to talk to her. He'd strike up conversation with her when she was playing with her friends on the front lawn. He would talk over the fence at her when she was playing in the back. But what really set me off was when he called my house number, looking to speak to her. That was it. I went over and flipped shit at him, and his parents told him to stay the hell away from her. This strained mine and his parents' relationship massively, and I used to get along with them pretty well. I told his parents I'd better not ever see him again. That's when things got weird. My daughter was always a little imaginative and paranoid. I mean, so was I when I was younger, so me and my wife didn't think much of it. She would think there were monsters under her bed and whatnot. You know, the usual things young kids say when they are scared. So when she told me there was something living in her closet and she was too scared to get up and tell us at night, but it wasn't there in the daytime, we blew it off as no big deal. A few weeks went by, and one night my wife and daughter were staying at my mother's for a girls' night. I also asked my buddies if they wanted to come round, but they were all busy, so I turned on the TV and put on some random TV show on Netflix. I eventually fell asleep downstairs at around 1 a.m. About half an hour later, I get a call from my neighbor with the creepy son, telling me something along the lines of, "We saw that you were up, so maybe you could help look for our son as he went missing." They said they went by his room to use the bathroom, and his door was open, which is unusual, and there was no sign of him. We need help looking for him. The phone call woke me up, though I wasn't up, so I asked why they thought I was. Then what they said next made my heart skip beats. "Oh, he saw you walking around upstairs, and the light is on," they said. My blood ran cold as ice. I'd been passed out on the couch, and I know no one turned any lights on. I instantly hung up on them, ran outside to my truck to grab my shotgun, but noticed the cops pulling up to my neighbor's house at this point. I sprinted over and told them there was someone in my house, and now I looked up at the window. I could see the lights in my daughter's room were on, and there's a silhouette pacing back and forth. When the cops went in, they found the neighbor's sick and twisted son just sitting. They're waiting in my daughter's room with a nice little setup in her closet with pictures of her sleeping on the wall of her closet. He got taken out by the cops. I started cursing at the freak. Then what he said proved even more that he is a twisted kid. He said he likes to watch her sleep in the moonlight. After this situation, I have never spoke to his parents since, and even the other day I seen a for sale sign at their house. Good riddance. Story 2. I was 17. I lived with my parents in a nice home in the suburbs. My parents were the type to take a lot of trips, both for business trips and for pleasure, and would do so all throughout the year. Let's just say my family were pretty well off with money. So when they would go during the school year, I'd be trusted to stay home by myself and watch the house for anywhere from a couple days to a whole week. I didn't mind. I quite enjoyed it, as I would normally invite my friends round, and sometimes even enjoyed it. During this week, my parents were both away for days, so pretty much every night I'd go out and get food from somewhere. It was on the second night alone that I played video games on the computer for nearly 5 hours straight. It was a Saturday, so I was staying up late and didn't have to do any homework. But around 9:30, I heard my belly rumble because I hadn't even eaten anything yet, so I took a break and got my shoes on. Then I walked to my local fast food place. It was close to closing time, so I wasn't expecting a line or anything. But when I walked in, there was a single man standing at the counter. He looked like he just ordered and was waiting for his food. I stepped around him, and an employee took my order. Then I stood behind the man and waited as well while I was there. Though I noticed how rough the man looked. He looked like he was homeless. He was tall and skinny, wearing ripped-up clothes and having long, greasy hair. He got his order and left. A couple minutes later, I got my food and went out and started my 5-minute walk home. I got home pretty quick. I went to my room and sat at my desk and turned on a Mr. Beast video to watch while I ate my sandwich. It about was 10 p.m. by then, but I wasn't that tired and was planning on staying up for another few hours at least, and maybe even jump on Fortnite with my buddies or something. As I sat there, though, I heard a quick and subtle sound from downstairs. I paused the video and listened, but didn't hear anything more. I stood up and leaned my head into the hallway, listening again, but still not hearing anything at this point. I still didn't know what the sound was. I wasn't paying attention enough, and it was so quick that I couldn't even really tell where in the house it came from. Although thinking it was probably nothing, I still wanted to be sure. And also because when I was a kid, I hated being in the house myself, but I slowly grew to love it. So I walked downstairs and looked around. There wasn't much to see. Everything was just how it had been left. But as I walked past the front door, I realized what the sound was. I grabbed the door handle and shook it, recreating the exact sound I heard someone had tested the door. I quickly looked out the peephole, not seeing anything. Then I ran around to the back door. I scanned the backyard until my eyes fell on a figure they were facing away from the house, standing at the door to the shed. He was tall and thin, and after a few seconds I was almost positive that it was the man I'd seen earlier that night at the sandwich shop only a moment later. Though he forced the shed doors open and stepped in, I took this as my chance to call the police, so I ran up to my room and dialed 911 as I watched the shed. From my room window, the operator said officers were en route, but less than a minute later the man rushed out of the shed holding what looked like pipe. He then slowly walked toward the back door. I ran out into the hallway to see if I could do anything to stop him, or maybe even run out of the house, but I was stopped by the piercing thud of metal slamming against the back door. My adrenaline spiked, and in those few moments I made the decision to run for the front door. Seeing the man continuing to break down the back door, I ran out into my front yard and onto the street. Running to the corner of the block, a few minutes passed before 2 police cars pulled into the driveway and went in through the open front door. I made my way back to the house, getting there just as they pulled the man out and locked him in their car. What the police told me was disturbing. They told me they found the man hiding in my closet with a huge kitchen knife. I walked back inside the house, and it looked like the man went on a rampage, destroying everything he could in the few minutes it took for the cops to show up. Why he followed me home and did what he did is unknown, but the man clearly didn't seem very stable. My buddy Mark came and stayed over that night, and my parents returned home the next day. I am 17 now, and ever since then I have never stayed in the house myself again. Story 3. 4 years ago, I lived in a very small one-bedroom house with one of my best friends. We lived in a small house as we couldn't afford anything bigger, so that's why we settled with a one-bedroom house. I slept in a sleeping bag in the living room, and my friend slept in the actual tiny bedroom. This happened in wintertime. When it was just starting to get cold, my friend had left me by myself so he could see his girlfriend. They've been going out for around 1 year now. She stayed a few hours away, so I was the only one at the house. This was over the weekend too, so I literally had nothing to do either. So I got to spend both entire days enjoying having the space to myself. It's not that I didn't like having him around, but it was just nice to not be crammed together in a tiny house for once. Anyway, on Saturday night, I went out to pick up some shopping as there was barely anything in the cupboards or fridge. I got home around 7:30. I didn't have work the next day, so I decided to stay up a little later and watch a scary movie like Halloween or one of the Friday the 13th films. I stayed there on the couch for at least an hour, almost finishing the movie when there was a quiet thump from down the hallway, which I just about heard from the screams coming from the TV. I looked over, not seeing anything, and figuring it was just the house, so I kept on with the movie for the next 20 minutes. And there were no other sounds, so the thump was completely forgotten about and had fully left my mind. Once the movie was over, I filled up my water bottle for the night and went back to my sleeping bag, and laying down I was on my phone for a while just texting some girls, but I fell asleep sometime around 12. When I woke up, my eyes felt really heavy and my vision was blurry. I wasn't sure why I'd woken up, but I knew it was still late into the night. I rubbed my eyes a bit and looked over at the clock. Then I laid my head back down, but a very faint sound came from the other side of the house. Wood creaking like someone carefully walking across the floorboards. I fully jumped up and I snapped fully awake. My heart rate started racing. As I got out my sleeping bag, I walked over to the hallway. The creaking had stopped, but looking down the hallway I got this terrifying feeling. I walked down until I reached the door to my friend's bedroom, and I noticed the door was slightly open. Then I leaned against it and listened. It was quiet. not even a sound coming from the house. And I pushed it, open a few inches, moving my eyes across the room as I continued to open the door wider. It looked empty, but I quickly noticed how messy the room was. There were things scattered around all over the floor like clothes, pictures like someone was searching for something, and the bed was very messy. I was confused. I took a step into the room and flicked on the light. Instantly, from the corner of my eye, I saw a figure in the pitch-black corner with his back turned to me. I jumped out of the room and slammed the door shut, then ran to get my phone as I heard the bedroom door open and loud footsteps going into the hallway. Once I had my phone, I ran to the back door, seeing a large man coming down the hallway, sprinting toward me. I got out and went through the backyard, but the man didn't follow. A minute later, I got to where I felt safe and called the police. They searched the house, but ultimately found nothing useful in figuring out who the man was or why he was there. They also aren't entirely sure how he got into the house, but it's likely he broke in while I was away getting groceries. There was also my friend's grandpa's watch that got stolen. That night, my friend was just as terrified as I was once I told him everything, and we eventually moved out of the house, hopefully to never encounter that man ever again. Thank you guys for watching. Remember to subscribe, like, and follow my other socials down below, and send your true stories to my email down below.